Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. When it comes to development news, of course we don't have a lot of that since we just came out of the holidays. It's pretty normal that CCP is not too active with announcements or news or anything like that at this point. For me personally, we are starting this year 2019 with an industry experiment, so I am trying to add a layer of industry on top of my exploration. So the exploration is meant to make me ISK to fund industry activities. One comment that will probably come back quite a little bit more from veteran industrialists is why don't I use some spreadsheets? To be fair, it's mostly laziness on my part, but I also really don't like the experience of having to do stuff on sites and outside of the game client, basically. So that is something that for me, my industrial experiment is going to be from an in-game perspective. The idea, the thoughts behind that is that most of my channel is geared towards newer players that want to give the game a go, and I don't think that the very first thing that they want to do is open up or make a massive Excel before getting started on some industry in EVE Online. So I'm always trying to keep that perspective in mind. That being said, we are going to take a very quick look at the New Eden store, but there is not much to say here. We still have just the fireworks, lots of Triglavian ships and a couple of bundles, but I'm not seeing anything that is on sale at the moment. So yeah, it's still basically the same. And who still needs fireworks now that New Year's Eve is over? I'm not sure, but they're still up there. I think CCP will make a bit of an update and some changes to the store pretty soon. Moving on to the market itself then, let's get started as always with some plex and stuff at 2 minutes 5 seconds. Oh, excuse me, had to sneeze there. We will be starting here with plex, 3,350,000 ISK in Jita. If we go to the player-owned trade hubs, 3.3 million, pretty close to that. Buyers coming in at 3,257,000 in Jita and 3,260,000 in the player-owned trade hub. So you can see almost no margin here. Whatever motion was happening has basically stopped at around 3.3 million, 3.26 million on the chart here. So a flattening out, a bit of a hesitation from the market. We're not going up, we're not going down. The real questions will be which forces will win out next. My personal expectations, there is one thing that could change things up. That would be a nullsec activity, a really big war, a really big deployment. I'm not seeing that happen anytime soon. So personally, I do think that just like last year, we might be in for a bit of hesitation and then the slow down trend towards the bottom. I personally do feel like the peak here at around 3.4, 3.3 million is over, and that from now on, if you still want to sell, I think you have to do so right now because you won't get many more good opportunities. I think it's basically down now towards the summer. We can get started on that part of the cycle. You can clearly see this on this 1 year chart here, that last year the peak was up here somewhere, then we went back down here, a bit of hesitation, but then March through August, the downtrend was there with a nice buy opportunity at less than 3 million ISK here. Of course, CCP sales and things like that can still influence that as well. But let's be honest, when CCP does a sale, you get an increase in volume and you actually usually get a downward motion in prices. So it's only going to accelerate the motion anyways. That is my expectation. It's a bit of a gamble, but I think that this chart is basically an echo of that. Next up, we have the multiple pilot training certificate. Surprisingly enough, just a couple of days ago, I managed to get to 1.3 billion. The 5-day moving average still on a climb. So let's take a quick look at that. Selling in player-owned trade hubs for just shy of 1.3 billion. Buyers coming in at above 1.2 billion. And in Jita, it's above 1.3 billion for the seller. So there's still some upwards momentum in the pilot training certificates that should keep the upwards momentum in the skill injectors going, in my opinion. First, we'll take a look at the extractors. That tends to be really tightly related to plex, and here we can see that same thing. In fact, the 5-day moving average has still been going down on increased volumes a little bit here, so a bit of pressure, a bit of hesitation in the skill extractor and the plex market. This week 370, almost 371 million for the sellers, 368 million for the first buyer. Look at that margin, absolutely no margin here. Same thing with plex, right? 3.3 million, 3260. Yeah, that is, we could go either way, but I personally do think that here we have that same pattern, holding pattern throughout the winter. And then we start to see a decline in activity and thus a decline in the price and in demand for plex. Unholy Rage probably coming as well, should put some downward pressure on plex. And as I've said, the only wild card in my opinion would be a nullsec war, something really major happening there, bringing new players and veteran players back to the game or something like that. Another thing could of course be a massive CCP announcement, but I don't think that we have any fanfests planned until March or something like that. So I think it's Amsterdam where we'll potentially have some announcements for the first time. Will I go there? Still deciding on what I want to do actually for Amsterdam. It should be in range for me. Next up we have the injectors. Let's start with the large scale injectors. These are finally plateauing, obviously at a 1-year high point, more than 850 million on the chart. Sellers coming in at 864 million ISK, buyers coming in at 850 million ISK. You can see that these have been forced up quite substantially. They're up here, the buyers are all the way up here. Look at what we could have bought for in October, September, 700 million to 850. That is a pretty nice profit to be taken. And as I've said in the previous EVE talks as well, the general pattern seems to have been that these downtrends in the multiple pilot train certificates have allowed skill point farms to create a whole batch of skill points and thus large scale injectors at very good margins. And so while plex had gone up in price starting in August, September, the large scale injectors had this delayed response up until November. And then on top of that, I think we had pretty much a perfect storm. Look at the increased volumes, of course. That is with the latest event that also had no, it's not this event, but the previous event that also had a very specific item. God damn, it's not even an event, it's the gifts. It's the 13 gifts for Christmas from CCP, where the final one gave us an item that allowed even veteran players to use 3 large skill injectors without having the reduced amount of SP injected to them because of the number that they already have. So that is why we're seeing this increased volume and this massive spike up to apparently 860 million is the best we are going to do, I think, for large scale injectors. Small skill injectors next, same thing. These are apparently already peaking. Let's see if this data point is actually also happening on the markets. But apparently a high point up to almost 180 million ISK happened. So it's 175 still for the sellers, buyers coming in at 161. This is probably a data point somewhere nearby. That's not actually the correct one just yet. So yeah, this one also working on a peak, but you can clearly tell here as well that we are hesitating at the tail end around 175 million for the small scale injector. That's again a pretty nice trade here. Buy them for 140, sell them for 175. Pretty decent profit that we could have made on a trade that only took 1-2 months basically to materialize. Pretty damn nice. And then finally, we have the daily alpha injectors that obviously went down already in price. Then we have a CCP sale driving them down to 35 million. We get a bit of a comeback. So obviously here we should have tried to buy them, let's say for 35 million, already selling back at 49 million, 45 for the buyers. And the potential 55 to 60 million obviously exists. So I would wait for such prices to come back before selling the daily alpha injectors that you bought at, let's say, below 40 million ISK. And that's it for the plex and stuff. I think we're basically now going to have to look forward to the next year. What's going to happen in 2019? Will we see big wars? Will we see CCP come out with interesting plans that will drive interest in the game? And all of that could have a big influence on plex. But again, looking at what happened last year, and I think the year before that as well, you do know that after the winter, and especially towards the summer, we have this decreased activity and thus usually a decreased price for plex as well. So right now we're still in sell territory, but make sure to do so on time, I would say. Next up, we have our minerals coming in at 10 minutes and 5 seconds. Like that. As always, we'll start with titanium. You can see a bit of a resurgence again, bouncing off of the 4.5 ISK mark. So that is basically the new range, 4.5 to 5 ISK, definitely at the lower end at the moment, bit less than average, but selling at the moment in GTA 464, buyers coming in at 4.6 ISK. I would say that's okay, considering the entire mineral market, the entire situation for the game. I think that if you're managing to sell your titanium above 4.5, would love to see 5 ISK, just not gonna happen, especially with these volumes. Look at that, 2 billion, 2 billion, 1.3 billion. People want to take advantage of every single little upswing from minerals at the moment, so you gotta be fast, and I wouldn't blame you for trying to unload your titanium at this point. Pyrite went up a little bit last week. We can see that that increase did continue for a good 10 days or so. At the tail end here, we are hesitating and going back down a little bit, but still 365 for the sellers, 358 for the buyers. We have been very close to 3 ISK, so at the moment, giving pyrite a bit of breathing room from the 1 year lows, which we've basically constantly been having here. 1 year low, again here, again here, again here, and finally when we reached 3 ISK, that's when investors came in, driving the price back up at least a little bit, and now it's gonna be really dependent on, of course, again, CCP and potentially big destruction in null. After that, we've got Mexalon continuing the downward slide. That is not great. You look at that, another 1 year low point. Basically, we have a delayed response here as well. The main reason, I think, is that Mexalon is a major bottleneck in nullsec, and so it managed to maintain higher demand generally, but now with a longer period of, well, I would say a more stable situation. It's never completely stable in nullsec, of course, but now I think that nullsec is becoming more and more self-sufficient. They're getting their supply lines all smoothened out, and as a result, now, Mexalon is actually suffering greatly on this calmer period, and selling for 57.28. That's really bad, knowing that you could have sold that for 70 ISK most of the year, and then 55.25 for the buyers. Pretty narrow margin, but it looks like the market wants Mexalon towards 55 ISK at this point. After that, we've got Isogen, also very slow uptick from 15 ISK, nothing great, but again giving it a little bit of breathing room from those 1 year lows. 16.41 for the sellers, 16.18 for the buyers. Definitely not a good price if you look at this entire 1 year chart, but at least it's not still going even lower towards like 10 ISK or something like that. After that, we've got Noxium. That is bad news. Noxium did really well to fight off that 300 ISK breaking point here, managed to do so through November and December, but now in the early year here, early start of 2019, we are finally breaking 300 ISK, 295 for the sellers and 285 for the buyers. That is obviously quite a bit of pressure. I think it's basically a bit of resurgence in Pyrite and Isogen, but where do those guys come from? Absolutely terrible, and now it's that pressure on Mexalon that is now also starting to show in Noxium. I think there's just no reason to still pay that price, that average price for the entire year, when everything is so low at the moment. So the market is breaking that 300 ISK price defense here, and I think we're gonna move straight towards like a 250 to 300 range. I've been expecting that for a little bit, and we'll see if it happens. After that, we have Zydrine. Nice little comeback here to 500 ISK for Zydrine, so also coming off of their 1 year lows. I would call it a bit of breathing room, because the general trend in minerals is still that we're mining way too much for the destruction at the moment, and as a result, it's 580 ISK for the sellers and 490 for the buyers. Looks like it's good in the last month or so, but look at the historical values and look at the values in the last year or so. this is actually really a pretty low price for Zydrine. Of course, the new moon mining mechanics opening up Zydrine and Megasite in HiSec has everything to do with this, of course. Then we've got Megasite, same thing here, stopping the ascent, but trying to stay above 600 ISK, I think. 596, not succeeding. 596 for the sellers, 552 for the buyers, and that is basically the danger that you have here. Any increased price is immediately going to get flooded by supplies, by people wanting to take advantage of finally being able to sell their minerals at better prices than they have at the 1 year low points. And so none of these I think will last very long, but to my surprise here, Isogen is actually on that slow upburn here, where at the tail end though you can see a bit of hesitation as well. So right now minerals are trying to basically form bottoms, and yeah, maybe what could be happening is that it becomes so unproductive to mine that we actually see mining activity decrease, and that is the reason why for instance here in Zydrine we go back up, in Pyrite we go back up a little bit, just because, well, players are not bothering to mine when Pyrite is only worth 3 ISK a unit. And then when Titanium goes down to like 4.5 ISK or below that as well, why the hell would you be mining in HiSec anymore? Absolutely no reason to do that. Might as well do what I do, switch to exploration. Those faction pieces are going at crazy prices at the moment, and yeah, then I buy cheap minerals with what I make there. I think maybe there's more people doing the same thing at this point. Perhaps the monthly economic report could be interesting to see in like the last couple of months or so if something like that is happening. Next up we have PI coming in at 1615. Oh, and that reminds me, I haven't, oh well, I know what I'm gonna check for the extra product. So PI, let's get started on these broadcast nodes. Try to get back to an average price of above 2.1 million. A bit of pressure at the tail end, I think here, yep. Back down to 2 million, in fact. Ooh, less than that for the sellers and also for the buyers. That is interesting. So you're now just buying straight from the sellers at this point here for less than 2 million ISK. It's not that many of them, but you do have a small buy opportunity for some cheap broadcast nodes if you need them. Next up, construction blocks also falling back down here. Let's see where the sellers are at. Below 10,000 ISK, buyers also well below 10,000 ISK. So now my purchase of 9999 is not that great anymore, but I've got patience. I think that any purchases below 10,000 ISK for construction blocks, if you look at this entire chart, is not bad. A bit of a surprise that basically we have been flooded all of a sudden, and that broadcast nodes are well below average, with sellers below 2 million, construction blocks with sellers below 10,000. Let's see if this trend continues. Yes, it does. Here are the consumer electronics driving the 5-day moving average well below 12,000 ISK, and a data point at 11,000 ISK at this point. 12,000 for the sellers, 10,000 ISK for the buyers. Look at that margin opening up. If you manage to grab consumer electronics at 10,000 ISK, you are way below the entire chart. Also, in my opinion, in buy order territory. At some point this comes back to 13-14k. So yeah, consumer electronics, definitely interesting. Construction blocks, I have an investment in that ready, so I think I'm gonna shoot for some consumer electronics as close to 10,000 ISK as possible. Fuel related coolants doing really well still, 12,000 ISK at a 1 year high point, 12,200 for the sellers, 11,500 for the buyers. Great item to make. Gas planets, very ubiquitous, very available, and very easy to make. Enriched uranium, same thing. Try to go back down to 13,000 ISK, but the market is saying nope. For some reason, fuel PI is very much in demand. 13,300 for the sellers, 13,900 for the buyers. What a contrast between these fuel PI items that on the introduction of the refineries saw a massive hit. Because of course people took down their bosses, there was much lower demand for fuel, and so all of these were doing really badly. Where at the same time, of course, the construction of new structures was at an all-time high, so all the other items were actually really high. It was the exact opposite. If you look at broadcast nodes, a bit higher, construction blocks, look at that nice peak, while coolants were in a slump. Now we have the exact opposite situation. Fuel-related PI materials are at 1 year highs, and the others seem to be in a slump at the moment. Integrity response drones crawling back out of less than average price, getting back to 2.5 million, 2.6 for the sellers, 2.5 for the buyers, a touch above average but really not by much. Mechanical parts, fuel related, trying to defend that 11,000 ISK price range, not really succeeding, but still the sellers 11,700, buyers are at 10,000 ISK, wide margin, and with the average price around 11k, it's usually the sellers that tend to win out. I've got 1 hour left. Okay, a bit surprising. I thought I would have 2 hours left. All right, moving on. Nuclear reactors managing to get back above 90,000 ISK apparently. Yep, 100,000 for the sellers, 87,000 still for the buyers. So you can see that hesitation because the buyers are still trying to buy for a pretty cheap price. Organic mortar applicators, after getting back to an above average price, are now falling back down a little bit. 1.1 million for the sellers, 1 million for the buyers. Robotics for fuels, that is the first PI material where we have some bad news, dropping back to 92,000 ISK a couple of days ago. 97,000 for the sellers and 92,000 for most buyers. That is not great. That is the first one that is tied to fuels that actually has given way. So I'm basically still thinking these guys try to sell, try to produce. These guys try to buy, get into that consumer electronics crash, get into that construction blocks crash. At some point, more structures will come out, and then we'll have a very nice, or just a seasonal thing might happen as well. And I think we've got some nice stocks to sell. Self-harmonizing power cores above 2 million, but a bit below average. 2 million for the sellers and a bit below that for the buyers. Superconductors next. Nice crash, nice volatility also though. That is quite surprising. Managing 14k couple times in the last 2 months, and also managing to go below 11,000 ISK in that same period. So very volatile. Still 11,800 for the sellers and 10,900 for the buyers. So you're buying below 11,000 ISK. Not as pronounced, I would say, as consumer electronics, but also a small buy opportunity in superconductors. And then test cultures, after also doing pretty well, managing to stay at 10,000 ISK or get to 10,000 ISK a couple of times, is now dropping back off the radar. 8,400 for the sellers, 7,675 for the buyers. That is very low as well, all of a sudden below 7,000 ISK. I would almost say test cultures is another possibility for an investment. And then finally, wetware mainframes that try to get back, right? 2.4, 2.5 million could be an average in the first half of the year. We try to get back to that, but look at the end here, crashing back down. 2.3 million for the sellers, 2.2 million for the buyers, not maintaining that increased price at all. We're back to a less than average price for the year, I would say. So PI, very interesting situation. I wonder how long coolants and enriched uranium can defend their price ranges, and then we're starting to see buy opportunities in the other PI materials. Next up, we have advanced materials coming in at 22.50. Like that. Let's see what these are doing. Last week, I think we were basically coming off of lows that were about a bit over a month ago, right here, November. We often had 1 year lows and buy opportunities, but nothing too drastic in the motion here again. Crystalline carbonides pretty flat for the week. So here, too early to sell and definitely not the best time to buy. Ferrite carbide, that one is going back down and touching 150 again. 151.5 for the sellers, but 140 for the buyers here. That is well below this chart. If we try to even make that one come, you're buying at around this price range. That is a buy opportunity in ferrite carbide, in my opinion. Pretty cool, actually. Yep, definitely one that I think I want to invest in myself. Next up, we have titanium carbide. That is a different picture. Again, you can see that here in October we touched on 150. Then we've made it back a little bit towards 200. We're not there yet, so we're still a bit below average. But you know, buying for 192, selling for 192, buying for 188. That's just basically no man's land. Too early to sell and not a great time to buy. Tungsten carbide next managed to get up to 225. So here, when we broke 175, that's a pretty nice little trade that could have been made for tungsten carbide. I think I made one as well, but I removed it from my overview here in the ticker. Perhaps I should make another folder with past trades or something like that to keep up with that. That's maybe a nice idea. Can I just new folder? I'll put in past trades, and I'll try to keep up with that as well as I make trades. But I've been focusing on industry in the last couple of days, so haven't made too much effort in this part of EVE Online. But yeah, tungsten carbide coming back from well, an above average price, only slightly, but it managed to get there. And so again, too early to buy and a bit too late to sell, basically. So that was tungsten carbide. Let's move on to the metamaterials then. So here, let's quickly recap for the carbides, carbonite items. Ferrite carbide, yes, obviously in a buy opportunity, close to 140 for the buyers, and the others are unfortunately in a place where it's definitely too early to buy, and it's basically not a great price to sell at either. Next up, we have the metamaterials, photonic metamaterials. What makes it bad is, of course, this previous March bottom at 15,000 ISK. Otherwise, I would say, yeah, look at that, pretty decent place to try to grab a buy order. 17,500 for the sellers, 17,200 for the buyers. I'm basically of the opinion that we should wait and see. If nothing happens and we get back towards March, April without ever breaking back down to 15k, then yeah, this becomes our new floor to look at. But right now, I'm still a bit hesitant. Plasmonic metamaterials next. There we go, and that's what I want to see. Look at that. Previously, in March, April, again, 17,500 this came into play. After that, most prices, 20,000 and up, have been possible. And now finally here at the tail end, we are dropping back down. 18,000 on the chart, 18,000 for the sellers to 18,600, but 17,940 for the buyers. Buyers have come in below 18,000 ISK. So let's try to get that one on the chart. Buyers are now below 18,000 ISK. That is becoming a buy opportunity in the plasmonic metamaterials, even compared to last year, the early part of the chart here. So yeah, plasmonic metamaterials, I think it's tied to ferrite carbide, so that makes a lot of sense. Another buy opportunity. These two, very interesting in my opinion. Next up, we have the non-linear metamaterials, definitely going back down substantially as well. How close to 20k are we? That's basically the question. 22,000 for the sellers, 22,000 for the buyers. Still a bit too early in my opinion to jump on that one, but if this 5-day moving average has any momentum and gets close to 20k, we will have another buy opportunity. And then the terahertz metamaterials, actually same thing as with tungsten carbide, actually a small trade that we could have made there. Bottom at 20k, which reached the same one as again February, March here earlier in the year, about a year ago, and then managed to come back to maybe even a touch above average, and now we're on our way back down. But yeah, wait for buyers to get back to 20k or less before calling that a buy opportunity. Interesting situation, finally really seeing the link between the carbonites and the metamaterials, and in ferrite and plasmonic metamaterials I am seeing a buy opportunity personally. For the other advanced moon materials, we have fermionic condensates flat at 90,000 ISK. Again, I have that same hesitation. Looking at this here, when you see us break 90k, you've got a buy opportunity. If you look at, let's say, the last 10 months, but 89,000 and then 88,500 for the buyers. But we've got this precedent here, late January last year, where the chart actually broke 90k quite substantially, went to 80k, and so this still makes me hesitant about this current situation. Ferrogel, definitely an average price at the moment. If you look at the entire year, a bit below, definitely below average for the last 10 months or so. But yeah, basically not in a place where I want to make trades. Fullerenes, same thing. You can see we've got the highs, we've got the lows. We're pretty much in the middle of that. So that's another no for me, unless buyers are below 1,000 ISK. Yeah, they are below 1,000 ISK. it's a gamble to take. I prefer them closer to 900 before I make a move. Hypersynaptic fibers, that's a nice move back down here at the tail end, basically making one big bubble of these last 8 months or so. 11,000, how close are we to that for the buyers? They're below that, alright. Hypersynaptic fibers, 10,700 for the buyers, 11,700 for the sellers. And if we try to create that, we are talking around here for the buyers. That's another buy opportunity, I think. Hypersynaptic fibers. Nanotransmitters flat between the charts, so I don't think I want to touch that. Phenolic composites went pretty low, but not to 2000 ISK, and here working on that below average region at the moment, so that's another no for me. Ceramic fibers, same thing, below average, but we actually have the bottoms here in November, so nowhere near a trade worthy at the moment. Yeah, interesting week here actually in the advanced move materials. I'm really liking what I'm seeing here. Fernite carbide, plasmonic metamaterials, and I think it was the hypersynaptic fibers. Yeah, with the 10,700 here for the buyers. I think there are some potential trades. Keep in mind though that these are, in my opinion, medium-term trades. You won't see a massive spiky comeback in here, I don't think. Next up, we have the Tech 2 ships at 30.30. Like that. Let's see what these are doing. So the Aries is basically flat at a less than 30 million price. Selling for, I'm actually surprised at how well the market is doing, because during last week I had so many problems trying to sell stuff in JITA. There's also local is back. How long? That's been several weeks now. It's flooded again with all that lovely JITA spam. So it looks like CCP did manage to improve JITA a little bit, which is good for EVTalk, of course. But let's get back to the Tech 2 ships. Aries, 28 million for the sellers, 26 million, a bit above that for the buyers. It basically gives you, has interdiction, it gives you a pretty cheap travel scepter in my opinion, with the Aries here. But should you buy a lot of these as an investment? I don't think so. The Basilisk last week was crashing down and is actually now crashing to 1 year low point. 212 million for the sellers. That one buyer at 200 million needs to be gone, and then you get a nice buy opportunity for the Basilisk at like 193 or something like that, which is well below the entire chart. So look out for that, I would say. Look out for this guy to actually grab his 7 Basilisk and then try to make an even better deal. Cerberus landing at 250 million, so that is a bit of an in-between one. 252 for the sellers, 236 for the buyers. I would say that this is a slightly below average price, especially with the margin between sellers and buyers, but nothing too crazy. The Crow seesawing its way back to an above 30 million price. 20, well, not yet, actually 30 million for the sellers, 28 million for the buyers. Does it have missiles in the fitting? Let's see. Yeah, missile launcher. I think that's why it's a bit more. It is immune as well, right? Correct. Yeah, immune here. I think that's why it's a bit more expensive than the Aries at the moment, because, well, missiles just make a bit more sense as an effective weapon system, I think, or it's an easier weapon system, I should say. But overall, this is still also probably a bit below average on price. The Guardian is going back down just a touch to 230, but again, just like with the Cerberus, I don't think we want to jump in unless we see buyers at 200 million, which they're at 215, so that's a no. The Heretic breaking 70 million here. That's interesting. How close to 60 million are the buyers? 63 million for the buyers, 68 million for the sellers. Look at this chart. 70 to 80 million even is a normal average. I would say try to grab a Heretic, just like I am trying to grab one. Let's see, in my ticker here, I'm still trying to grab that Saber at 65 million. Right now, you could try to grab a Heretic at less than 65 million as well, which I think if we try to get that on the scale, 65 here, it's not a bad region, especially now, 64, 63. Yep, Heretic in a buy opportunity. The Hound is still staying below 30 million ISK, but definitely up from the low, selling at almost 30 million, bars up to 27 million. So here, once that spikes up, I think I've got a couple ready to sell. The Ishtar crashing down to less than 250. Look at that data point, 230 million ISK. Let's see where the buyers are at. 221, okay, 228, 229 for the sellers, 221 million. And then get rid of that one and we're talking 210. Yeah, Ishtar, just like, what was it? The Basilisk needs to go through one more buy order and you really have a nice opportunity to grab some very cheap ones. On the Manticore front, finally breaking 30 million, going back up slightly at the tail end, so we are talking 30 million for the sellers, 27.7 million for the buyers at the low end for sure if you look at this entire chart. Next up we've got the Munin, also going down, not yet to 1 year low points, but definitely below average at this point. Buyers are at, well, again, we've got the same thing here. Still, I would love to see buyers at 200 million before making a jump, but get rid of this one guy, and then we're talking 206 million for the buyers. That is pretty low for the Munin. So another potentially a buy opportunity developing. Nemesis crashed down to less than 25 million, volumes up, so investors took advantage of that. Still, the increased price is quite low, 27 million for the sellers, 25 million for the buyers, so need to wait for another spike before we can really take advantage of that, but nice little buy opportunity about a week ago. The Oneros is going back down as well, heading for 180 on the chart, buyers coming in at 173. Is this a buy opportunity? Yes, but the volumes, keep an eye on the volumes of the Oneros. Never buy a dozen of these because you're never going to get rid of them. Maybe for a single ship, I think a trade might be risked, but don't do too many of these. The Purifier under pressure as well, definitely trading below average at this point. 29 million for the sellers, 27 million for the buyers. Then we've got the Saber that I'm trying to pick up, unfortunately stable at 70 million with the buyers coming in at 66. So we still have quite a ways to go before I can actually grab this one. I'm gonna leave it, who knows, on a good day I might get lucky, but yeah, I don't expect it. Then we've got the Scimitar dropping again to 200 million. Look at these, are much better volumes, so if I would have to choose, I would try to grab a Scimitar at 205 million. Would prefer to see it below 200 million, but that's not happening. Still, this is a slight buy opportunity as well. And then we've got the Stiletto back above a 30 million ISK for the sellers, but still 26 for the buyers. So the Take-Two market definitely still under pressure at the moment. I think basically again lack of destruction, lack of action, and more and more I think we've got streamlined production cycles as well going on in nullsec, which brings more stability, more supply, and thus yeah, a bit of a downtrend in the price at the moment. I'm trying to buy some of the really cheap Take-Two ships at the moment, so especially the stealth bombers, I like it. For this week, I think I should basically replace my Saber attempt with a Heretic attempt. I think that makes a lot of sense, trying to grab this for like 64 million or something like that. And then, yeah, just try to hold on to these and wait for some action to come back. I think there are potentially some really good purchases to be made in the Take-Two market right now. Next up, we have the Take-3 market coming in at 37.40. Like that. And here we go. Let's start with the Confessor. Staying below 40 million ISK, so under pressure a little bit, I would say. 38 million for the sellers, 35.6 million for the buyers. It's not the 40 million high point, but you can also see that we're not crashing down because, well, the supplies are not crazy. 33, 35, 18, all of this is very much doable. So I think that we are going to stay well clear of 35 million on the average prices at the moment. Basically this range, 35 to 40, is maintainable, I think, at the moment. The Hecate getting back to 40 million ISK, so just below that for the sellers, and then 38.5 for the buyers. Again, look at the volumes, a bit more, but that is normal. We are talking about 40 million compared to 38 million here for the Confessor, so a bit more supply here is just going to bring these two back in line, in my opinion. But yeah, no signs of crashes or oversupply or anything like that. Then we've got a jackdaw after breaking 40 million, went back up above that. So here I think that basically the market is saying, yeah, let's try to keep these guys 35 to 40 million. That's an okay price. Here is a jackdaw, 41 million for the sellers, 39 million for the buyers. And again, volume wise, nothing too crazy. And then we've got the Zwepel as well, that actually is up quite substantially to more than 40 million isk. 41 for the sellers, bring it in line with the others, 38 million for the buyers. And here the volumes are down even lower at this point. So here the Tech 3 Destroyer market is pretty much primed for, I would say, a period of these average prices of around 40 million isk at the moment. No sign of oversupply, nothing too crazy. I think that what is happening in Nalsec, of course, with basically the destruction of Hard Knocks and that very first deployed Keepstar is going to keep that area of space from really oversupplying JITA at the moment. So I don't expect any real buy opportunities to form here either. Sell opportunities, yeah, sometimes you can see that there is some volatility here and there, but I think that we're basically again dependent on nullsec and a tactical destroyer meta, some fleets there being flown and lost before we see some actual movements here. Would I be investing in this? No, personally I think that there are better investments than Tech 3 at the moment, such as some Tech 2 ships. Moving on to the cruisers, we've got the Legion that is basically landing at 160 million, 170 for the sellers and 158 for the buyers. And again here, these volumes, you know, couple of sell orders, 1432, but other than that, all of them below 10 is definitely doable for the market to maintain the current price range. The Loki, by far the more popular one, is currently selling at around 220 million ISK on average, 216 for the sellers, 206 for the buyers. And here again with the volumes, yeah, 51 here, but other than that, it's nothing too crazy. Then we get the Proteus that is also pretty much flat for the week, below 180, 175 for the sellers and 160 for the buyers. And again, looking at these volumes, looks very reasonable. Last 24 hours looks actually decently doable as well. So very stable here and could go either way. On, you know, big Gnostic action, we could go up in price, but I don't think buy opportunities, pronounced buy opportunities, are in the cards at the moment. And then the Tengu moved up towards the 190 range recently, and now he's selling for 190 million. Buyers at 180. And here again in the volumes, nothing too crazy. So yeah, the Tech 3 market I think is it took the destruction of the biggest wormhole group to bring that stability here, but it is basically at average prices with doable supplies, absorbable by the market at the moment. And then for the extra product, I think we're just going to take a look at ice products. And then fuels as well, because, well, looking at the PI segments, we once again have coolants, things like that at 1 year highs. Should be super expensive to make fuel, and yet I know that I'm buying fuel for less than 90,000 ISK, which is kind of crazy. And then that also is being influenced here by a comment on one of my old videos about ice production that made a very interesting observation there. Of course, if you expect Unholy Rage to really hammer down some bots and to lower bot activity, well, ice mining is definitely a big one there as well. And so perhaps this is the right time to make investments in these categories. So let's go manufacturing. Then I think we've got ice products. There we go. And let's take a look at these charts. Here is heavy water, actually average for the year, currently at 450. Nothing too dramatic. 489 for the sellers, 440 for the buyers. I'm not seeing a pronounced buy opportunity on this one. We're basically average. Helium isotopes though, that is pretty obviously a 1 year low point, landing at 600 ISK here, 590 for the sellers, 561 for the buyers. Helium isotopes could be that investment to make if you expect an Unholy Rage to a ban wave to hit ice mining bots as well. Hydrogen isotopes should be in the same place. Yeah, exactly 700 ISK. Look at this 1 year chart. That's obviously a 1 year low yet again. Liquid ozone is different at a 1 year high point, actually pretty close to it, I would say 137 on the chart, selling for 142, bars at 136, so that's no. But the isotopes are interesting. Look at that again, nitrogen isotopes, the entire year here One massive increase here, and then at the tail end we're back to a 1-year low point of 700. And then oxygen isotopes coming off of a low of 800 ISK, currently around 900 ISK. So yeah, nitrogen isotopes, hydrogen isotopes, helium isotopes. I think that some investments in these, it's a bit of a gamble, right? You are dependent on something changing in the moon mining activities, but I think that that's definitely a possibility. And ooh, strontium. You guys know that I still have that terrible strontium in my purchases, and that's actually going up in price all of a sudden. So it's strontium, let's see, 2,300, now selling for 2,300. I could break even. I could finally break even. How long has that been? And I actually have this from previously. I think that 2,300 is maybe on this dip or something like that. I've been holding on to that for probably more than half a year, and I could just break even now. So yeah, it does show that you know, I'm definitely not a master trader or anything like that, but patience does often tends to pay. So here now, strontium, something that I'll keep in mind and keep an eye on, just to try and get that sell done. And then isotopes, yeah, I think I might want to make a move on that, because if you look at this, this is the reason why fuels are so low. The PI materials should actually give us quite expensive fuel. And if I go for extra, here's where I keep an eye on fuels. Look at that, helium fuel blocks, 1-year low point, selling for 18,700, buyers coming in at less than 18k. Hydrogen fuel blocks also definitely trading in the 1-year low region, 90,000 for the sellers, but less than 18,000 again for the buyers. And then we get nitrogen fuel blocks, 1-year low again competing with what happened last year here. That is quite interesting. And then oxygen fuel blocks is the first one to take off for some reason. That's interesting. 20k now, selling for 25,000, and then at 20,000 ISK. Man, it's time for a trip to Jita, I think, and to start investing in isotopes and fuel blocks. I think we are primed for an interesting investment there. Need patience, it's a bit of a gamble, but so many of these are at 1-year low points that I think it's a given that we should give that a go. And that's gonna be it for this Eve Talk, guys. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I'll see you next time.